Now it's time to bring in one of your favorite guests, businessman, financial commentator, Jim Rogers, chairman of Rogers Holdings and Beeland Trust Incorporated. Jim, thanks so much for being back here with us on The Income Generation.
I am delighted to be here. I'm very pleased.
Jim, love having you on the show. You know that. Real quickly, though, the Fed has lost their minds. More stimulus than ever in history. So has Congress. More monetary and fiscal stimulus as a combination. You know, a year ago, pre-COVID, the average person with $1,000 in their bank account has 7 times more than that today because of the stimulus. When do we see the stimulus start to normalize out in the economy? Because right now, inflation is going to the moon.
Jeff, it's good to be old in America now because old people are getting the advantage of all of this insanity. But it's bad to be young. My children are going to have a huge burden to pay. This is not good for America. This is not good for anybody, except maybe a few bureaucrats and a few old people.
But Jim, you know, nobody has to pay for that if the rate on that debt is 0%. And not even paying principal back. So they've got an open check mentality. But at some point, you're right. The stimulus is unsustainable. Even Jerome Powell said that. So, in your best estimation, when will the economy start to normalize from this massive boost of stimulus we just went through?
Well, right now we're beginning to form some bubbles in the U.S. stock market and the financial markets. The bond market is clearly a bubble. It's never been this expensive in the history of the world. So we're starting to have some bubbles. I would suspect, and my market timing is horrible, I would suspect by the end of this year or next, it will just get too high, and then things will start going down, and we'll have a horrible bear market.
Well, there's no doubt about that. We know that bubble's being created right now. But, you know, I don't buy the Fed's argument that inflation is transitory. I mean, for the Lord's sake, a container of furniture went from $3,500 to $10,000 in about the last 60 days. Gas is going crazy, so we're seeing rampant inflation across the board. At some point, you think consumer demand would stop because of that. But it's not, because we're living off the stimulus still.
That's because there's so much money being printed and spent and thrown out the window. Jeff, you should go outside and stand out under the window and get some of the money. That's your problem. You're not getting enough of the money.
You know, Jim, that's not the correct answer we're looking for.
Of course, it has to stop. This is going to end very, very badly. We've never had bonds this expensive in the history of the world because the Federal Reserve keeps buying them. We have staggering amounts of debt in the United States, nothing like we've ever had before. Stock markets are starting to form bubbles. I mean, Jeff, you know as well as I know. I mean, I've seen this movie before. I know it ends badly. And unfortunately, it's going to end badly for a lot of people this time around.
As usual, Jim, it's been our pleasure having you here on The Income Generation.
My pleasure. Let's do it again sometime. And be careful.
And now let's bring in our next guest, someone who's no stranger to helping clients assess their own risk tolerance levels. And that's income specialist James Locke. He's the founder of Pool Locke Associates, located in Wilmington, Delaware. James, it's great to have you back with us here on The Income Generation.
Hey guys, so glad to be back.
So James, in your experience, do most people fully understand the concept of risk tolerance as it relates to investing?
Most people that we run into have very little understanding of risk tolerance. They have been investing and saving all their life and really just been keeping their head down. And now all of a sudden they're getting closer to retirement and some advisor is telling them, hey, you're okay, but they've never really done a deep dive and taken a look at it. And when we start talking with them, that all changes.
Not surprised by that at all. However, as an advisor that you are, James, how important is risk tolerance in helping you build the right strategies for a particular client's need?
Every client is different. So you have to start with that understanding that, everyone is different. But risk tolerance is really that cornerstone. Where are we starting from? If somebody comes in and says, hey, James, the most important thing to me is I don't lose a penny. Well, then we know where we're starting. And other people might be further up the risk scale, and analyzing that starting point is critical to know where you go from there and what's going to work for that particular client in their entire investment retirement portfolio.
And so I bet you it's more common than you probably realize that people unknowingly don't know what their risk tolerance is, and they might be overexposed to risk and not really know it.
Absolutely. A lot of people that come in and we talk to for the first time, their experience previously of understanding risk was probably filling out some form and they got a letter assigned to them, A, B, C, D, or E, or some number, and it doesn't really mean anything to them because they just think, oh, well, I'm not so risky, or I'm in safe stuff, and they can't really define it. We see that all the time. Once we really get in and break down where their true risk is, and hey, what will happen to you if the market starts lagging, starts going sideways, or even starts going up, what's going to happen to you in your portfolio, and does it make sense for you in your retirement?
Thanks so much for being back with us on The Income Generation. Now it's time to welcome our final guest, Nathan Cox. He's co-founder of Retirement Income Solutions, a retirement income store located just outside of Nashville. Nathan, thanks so much for being back with us here on The Income Generation.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Nathan, one thing I often find is that people don't realize the importance and magnitude of what certain risks are that they're usually taking. And it might be because of their current advisor, or maybe they don't understand and have all the relevant facts. But do you ever run into this?
Oh, absolutely. I think the financial services industry as a whole does a pretty poor job of explaining risk tolerance levels. And I think a lot of people really don't understand truly what type of risk that what risk they have in their portfolios.
So what do you think then the most important thing is you think people should know about understanding risk tolerance?
The most important thing, okay, I think that the most important thing for people to realize is that everyone is very unique. Everyone has their own unique fact patterns when it comes to risk tolerance levels. What your coworker, the amount of risk your coworker has in their portfolio, or maybe a friend or family member, really doesn't have that much bearing on your risk tolerance level. I think people need to understand that they're unique. They have different unique fact patterns, and their risk tolerance levels may be completely different than others that they know.
Sure. So what you're saying then is your risk tolerance will be adjusted and or change as you get older, or maybe closer to retirement.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And it depends on many other factors, such as, how much income you need in retirement, and where your income sources, where's that income going to come from?
So Nathan, thanks so much for being back with us here on The Income Generation.
Thank you for having me.